But joining us right now is an old friend and a mentee of mine. And he gives me total credit for the career he's had, and that's Andy Freed. Andy, how are you, my friend?
I am well, Stan. You get all kinds of credit, and it
Uh,
is very good to talk to you.
it is good to talk to you. Um, how are things going in the Tampa Bay Rays broadcast booth this year?
Fine. I mean, geez, are you
Yeah,
kidding? I'm embarrassed to say, I thought we might be a 90 loss team this year. I
I,
had no expectation for this team to be uh, even a 500 team. All I saw was flaws coming out of spring training, and I'm so happy to report just how wrong I was. This team has been way better than I ever could have predicted, and they've kind of done what the Blue Jays did last year. Everybody predicted them for last,
yep.
and now here they are in first with 35 to go.
That was really going to be my first question, was going to be posed that way. Did you expect this? And you've pretty much answered that. What do you think are some of the things that took place that you didn't foresee that have led this? Clearly, the Aaron Judge injury is a huge part of the Rays being as far ahead of the Yankees. But what's gone right that you didn't anticipate?
Well, the Judge thing, I'm sure, plays an element, but the Rays were dominating the Yankees earlier on in the
Mm-hmm.
year when the Yankees had Aaron Judge
Yep.
and they had Stanton and they had Bellinger. So the reason I bristle at that a little bit is that it takes a little bit away from what the Rays have
Have
accomplished. I
accomplished.
think
Yeah.
and they really have accomplished. There have been surprises this year. There's no question. Nick Martinez, it never could have been foreseen that he'd have the kind of year that he's had. As late as his last spring training start, he had. I'm not exaggerating, Stan. One of the worst spring trainings you could ever imagine. He lost every start, and to lose a spring training game means you get beat up early in the game.
Right.
His stuff wasn't there. His sequencing was off. His ERA was enormous, and he's gone out and become an all-star pitcher. Brian Baker has become a closer in a mold that no one could have ever foreseen. When this season started,
Least
the
of all,
highest leverage.
least of all, Mike Elias.
Sure,
Yeah.
no question about it.
Yeah.
When the season started, Baker was kind of the fourth guy of the
Yep.
quote unquote big four in the bullpen. It was Griffin, Jacks with the highest leverage, and Edwin Uceda getting probably a lot of highest leverage, and then Clevenger the lefty and Baker the
Yep.
fourth guy. Well, Jacks joined the rotation. Uceda's never pitched. Clevenger's had a weird year, and Baker's become Bruce Sutter
Yep.
suddenly. So
Yep.
how do you predict something like that? They've also been able to get now what we can say consistently true stardom from Junior Caminero. You know, he had
Yep.
45 home runs last year. There was a thought of, well, okay, let's see him do it again. Well, he's done it again. Yandy Diaz has become, one of the fine hitters of his time. I'm firmly of the belief that if we were playing in the 70s or 80s, this would be a guy that's hitting 350, 360. I just
Yep.
think it's a lot
Yep.
harder to hit now. So you see a guy that hits 310, 320. Chandler Simpson has become much more of an everyday force and went through a 4 for 48 during the year. So I could go on and on and on. McClanahan has come back better than we ever could have
Mm-hmm.
predicted. So it's been a season full of surprises. And I will say this, and I'll say it for the front office, the people that they brought in, they've created a really cohesive clubhouse. It's as good a group as I've been around since being with the Rays.
I'm just curious. You look at Cedric Mullins' numbers, and they're sort of as struggling as we saw in Baltimore at times. But yet, Kevin Cash seems to pencil him in. How much does he value Cedric Mullins?
A ton, because this team, there's always the question of secret sauce and how are they
Yeah.
doing it. To relate it to Baltimore fans, and I relate to them so well because, as you know, that's what I'm based in. There's nothing secret to us. It's the Earl Weaver theory. Earl Weaver was doing run prevention before run prevention was called run prevention.
Mm-hmm.
It was pitching and defense. The pitching was good because he had Brooks and Belanger and Gritch and on and on. And Blair in the outfield. The Rays are at their best when they play defense their best, and that's what the Rays are based on. This team has to be a top defensive team, and that's where Cedric Mullins comes in. So whether he's hitting 200 or 250, or I think he had a month where he might have hit 300 for a time, his defense every day has been a steadying force. The Rays were at their best when they had B.J. Upton and Kevin Kiermaier and guys in center field That is a priority position for the Rays. And they also have Walls at shortstop, who, for my money,
He's
is the best
tremendous.
shortstop in
Yeah.
the game.
Yeah, he's a
He's an incredible
terrific
shortstop. So
defender. Yeah.
I'll say this for Mullins. Yeah, there have been long slumps this year.
Yeah.
But he's been consistent every day with his approach. He's a very good teammate. His defense has been outstanding. And it does seem, for whatever reason, that every hit that he's gotten has come in a big moment. And it's not like his RBI totals are huge, but when his home runs have come, they've come in the late innings. He turned opening day around with a home run. He won a game in Pittsburgh in whatever it was, the 13th inning or 14th inning with a home run. He's had a lot of big hits for the Rays, even though I'm sure the overall offensive numbers are not at all what he hoped they would be.
Just curious, Brandon Hyde, our manager for 5-6 years, now works for the Rays. Do you know whether or not, and I'm sure Kevin Cash was able to watch Cedric for years and envied that defense, but do you think there was a talk between Kevin and Brandon Hyde, and Brandon went to bat for Cedric?
I don't know that. I mean, I could guess. I know there's a lot of trust there, and there's a lot of admiration there, and I think everyone knows that Brandon Hyde is going to manage again.
Mm-hmm.
And just my own personal opinion, I think it was an enormous mistake for the Rays, not for the Rays, for the Orioles to let Brandon Hyde go. That is a true through and through baseball man with a ton of knowledge and a really good eye for talent and an ability to pull clubhouses together. What he did with the Orioles, I think, was just remarkable, to take them from the embarrassment of the league and certainly the embarrassment of the division to the top. And I know he didn't have a breakthrough in postseason, but neither did Gene Mauch for that matter.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I can't speak to a personal conversation between the two, but I know that they do talk a lot. And I know Brandon's around. Brandon's not just in some office somewhere. He's around, and I can't help but think that the fact that Brandon's here has lent the Rays to get several Orioles over here, including Tyler Wells now in the bullpen. So, like I say, I can't say for sure, but I would have to think it's pretty likely.
Okay. Andy,
Hey, Andy, it's Griffin. I'm curious why you think why hasn't anyone else been able to really copy that? I mean, I guess the Brewers are kind of do it a similar way that the
Cleveland
Rays
does it a little bit. Yeah,
maybe the Orioles for a year in 2023. But why hasn't anyone been able to kind of copy this way, the way that the Rays are perpetually competitive and oftentimes look like the best team in baseball?
They do at times. Look, I mean, they're not going to be good 10 years out of 10. I heard it said years and years ago, this rings in my mind, that when the new ownership took over for the Rays, which at the time was Andrew Friedman and Stu Sternberg and that crew, that said, if we can be good 6 or 7 years out of 10, then we're probably doing a good thing. It's not going to work every year.
Yeah.
It just isn't. You don't have the resources that other teams have. But I do think there is a true boldness. And if you notice, there's a lot of Rays GMs and managers around the league. Matt Arnold, what he's done in Milwaukee, cut his teeth with the Rays. So the Brewers, to me, have become a model of what the Rays are trying to do once again, where I think originally it was the Brewers trying to do what the Rays were trying to do. You're right. Cleveland does a fair amount of that stuff also. You have to be bold. You have to be willing to take criticism, because there's a lot of times where you'll make a roster move and it's really, really unpopular for your fan base. But you got to stick with it. I remember hearing years ago that the worst thing you can do in baseball from a front office standpoint is to constantly change plans. When you have a plan, you want to stick to it and see it through. And I think the Rays are remarkable at doing that. Stu Sternberg used to have a phrase that it's okay to break a few windows, but just don't burn the house down. In other words, take risks, take chances. That's the only swing big. That's the only way a team like this can succeed, and it's proven to be good. It's not sustainable every year like Yankees and Dodgers and whatever, but overall they're not afraid to swing big, miss big, hit big, and it's kind of the only way you can do it.
Speaking of Rays people, where is James Click now? Is he back with the Rays? Is he back with the Rays?
No. I thought the last time I saw James, I think he is still with Toronto.
Okay, I did not know where he ended up after he left Houston.
He's a great for a year or two.
He's
Absolutely.
a great baseball
very
person.
Bright.
Yeah, great.
Very
baseball
much so.
person. Hey,
very much so, and very much the modern definition of what an executive is.
He is in Toronto.
He is in Toronto. I'd forgotten that.
Yeah.
question about, while all these teams were looking, the Red Sox, the Yankees, the Dodgers were all looking for catchers, you guys snuck in, and I was amazed that you were able to pick up, Liam Hicks, who I think is an incredible get for you guys down there in Tampa. Could you speak to that? I mean, did they sneak into that? Did the other teams not really do their due diligence and find out if he was available?
No, first of all, just to take a step back, catching and the Rays, that has not been a great marriage over the years.
Yeah.
This organization from the very beginning has had a real blind spot in finding or developing catchers with few exceptions. Now, notable exceptions. Deanna Navarro in 2008 was an all-star, but he was never the same again. Travis d'Arnaud was a pickup during 19, and he did a lot of really good things. But in terms, they famously passed on Buster Posey to draft Tim Beckham, and that had all kind of fingers through it, the trade tree there. In terms of Hicks, no, I don't think there was anything sneaky about it. I think the Rays and Peter Bendix, who the GM or whatever his title is with the Marlins, comes from the Rays system also. And there was and that's why the Rays and the Marlins have had a fair amount of exchanges over the years in terms of trades, because Peter knows the Rays system and still has guys in there that he was a large part in, whether it be procuring or drafting or signing, whatever. Certainly part of the development also. So I think they just found a match there. But I don't think there was anything sneaky about it. The Rays went out and addressed everything they needed at the deadline, which is not something they've always been able to do. They got Freddie Peralta because they needed a starting pitcher. They got Tyler Wells because they needed a reliever. They needed a left-handed batter and someone to provide some protection for Junior Caminero, and a catcher. And those last two elements were what Liam Hicks provided. But boy, I'll tell you what, I've learned that trading for catchers is really, really hard.
Yeah.
The Rays have done it a couple times over the years. Ben Rortvedt, that didn't pan out. Hunter Fiducia, that didn't pan out. Now they're both back with the Dodgers. But, right now, Hicks, that's the thing, too, that I get concerned with Hicks, is that he really wasn't even catching all that much.
Yeah, I know.
With the Marlins. Joe Mack is down there, and he's their catcher of the present and future. So I think the Rays have to be careful to not wear the guy out also.
Andy, I wanted to ask you about former Towson Tiger, Richie Palacios. Why do you think he's been able to make a home for himself?
Yeah,
in
he's
Tampa?
really a pest for us.
Yes, he is. He is a very motivated young man. And by the way, as a shout out to Towson, it's very cool. I knew of Richie from a distance. I remember as a Cardinal, he had a really good series in Baltimore a couple of years ago before he was with the Rays. And somebody told me that he was from Towson. I was like, no. And so obviously we've bonded quite a bit. I like to educate him on past Towson Tiger exploits, and he likes to educate me on what's happening more with the current. But Richie is a guy that is healthy. I mean, that's what it comes down to. And one thing that I've learned over the years, and this sounds so basic, but the teams that tend to win are the ones that are healthiest at the end of the season. Richie has been injured for the last couple of years with the Rays. And the fact that he's playing such good defense, and yes, he's such a pest at the plate. He's not a guy that's going to overwhelm you on a single game basis, but you watch him over the course of time, and you look at him and you say, that's a guy that could be a part of a winning team. So, he fills his role. He's not going to start against lefties. He's probably going to be lifted for defense late in games from time to time, but even that's gotten better. And he also, what did someone say about him? He's a good vibes guy. He is. He provides something for the clubhouse also. There are certain guys over the years that for whatever reason, they just seem to fit with the Rays. Joey Wendell, Ben Williamson, Richie Palacios, they just kind of fit the mold of a complimentary player that's actually more than just complimentary.
Andy Freed is joining us right now. He's Rays play-by-play voice. Andy, I look at the Orioles, and I see a team that is in great need of an outfield overhaul going into the 2027 season. I just wonder, is Randy Arozarena, is he a positive on a team?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Oh, there's no question about it. Now, Randy definitely has personality.
Oh, there's no question about that.
He has personality, but generally his teammates like him. That's why I was so puzzled with that whole thing in spring training with he and Cal Raleigh. But Randy does have an amount of pride, and there are times that he he can be high maintenance in small amounts, but overall, his teammates love him, and he has as much of an ability as any player I have ever seen. And this is for a guy that speaks limited English to connect with fans. They loved him here in Tampa Bay, not just because he went out and won ALCS MVP, but he took a lot of time to get to know fans one by one individually. One of my favorite Randy stories was he was fairly new. I try to remember what year it was, but he took the field and left at Yankee Stadium, and he had hit a home run early in the series, and he did his whole thing. He got to third base, and he did his, I forgot what it was, a little dance or whatever, and then comes home. And then the whole ballpark is booing him up in New York.
Right.
Well, as he goes out to left field, this is game one of the series, and he started playing catch with some fans, and he started having a fun little go-between. And by the end of the series, the Yankee fans were applauding him in left field as a member of the Rays. Yeah. I mean, not many guys can do that. Randy is a positive force. I think I just miss him because he was a blast to be around, and I always wish him very, very well.
I look at the free agent market, and I don't know how the lengths that Seattle will go to get him. I'm expecting them to make some changes, but I look at him, and he smacks to me as sort of what the Orioles need,
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. One of the reasons the Rays are good this year, just to relate it to that, is because our outfield production last year was atrocious.
Yeah,
offensively and defensively. Now, not only have they become one of the top defensive outfields in baseball again, they're getting production, whether it be DeLuca or Mullins in key moments. Chandler Simpson has become a guy that
Velada's had a nice little season. Yeah,
Valade has. Oh, talk about a guy that fits. He reminds me, Stan, of when the Orioles were able to go out and get a guy like a John Lowenstein, where he was like never really Lowenstein had more big league time than Valade did, but for whatever reason, he slipped through the cracks. He was a number 2 pick of the Rockies. Maybe he doesn't do one thing great, but boy, does he fit into a group like the Rays. When you give him the platoon advantage, and the Rays are as good as any team at finding the platoon advantage, when he hits against lefties, he crushes them. And another guy that's had just big hits all year long.
Andy, I mean, I want to go back to what you're talking about with the Rays, being willing to take risks at times and have moves that pay off and moves that don't. But, and I look at the Orioles and now what they've done under Mike Elias, and it feels like they've been very risk averse. And I think that's caused a lot of frustration here. And, you've been around baseball for so long. Do you think that it could be time for the Orioles that they'd have to get that they need a new voice, a top leading things? Is that something that they need to think about?
I gotta be. It's hard for me to speak about another organization because I'm not around them enough. It's hard to know what those behind the scenes conversations are. In fact, it's impossible to know if you're not in and around it. I can speak to what works for the Rays, but I don't know. Sometimes maybe Elias is a competent general manager. There's no questions about it. But I mean, he did what he did in Houston, and he's done what he's done with the Orioles. To me, just the big thing with the Orioles is they missed their window.
Yeah.
That's happened with us time and again. The Rays had a window to win the series in 2008, and that segment of players through 10 and 11. That didn't happen. They had a window to win it from 19 to 23. That didn't happen, and the Orioles had their window from 23 to 24. Could anyone have predicted that Gunnar Henderson would have fallen off the way he has? And I know he's had a good run here. Could anyone have predicted that Adley Rutschman would have been traded by the 2026 season? No. I mean, just some things haven't panned out. All I know is whenever we play the Orioles, and Gunnar Henderson looks like Gunnar Henderson to me, and Colton Cowser hits home runs, and Dylan Beavers does good things, and let's not forget Jordan Westberg has been out for a large part of the year too. So I don't know how much of this really lays at Mike Elias as a degree of bad luck and the fact that they, for whatever reason, ran into a hot Rangers team when they did back in 2023, and they ran into a hot Kansas City Royals team for 2 games in 2024. So I can't speak structurally to the Orioles. I still think of them as a team that, gosh, I thought they were going to be better this year. I'm as stunned as anybody that they're down towards the bottom of the division.
Hey, last question for you, Andy, and we really appreciate your time today. The acquisition of Freddie Peralta, I think it's the difference between whether you guys can really win the World Series or not. I saw and a much improved performance in his last start. Was surprised when from the outside that he was removed, I think after 4 2/3 or something. Was it pitch count, or did Kevin Cash want him to leave on a good note? Why was he pulled in that last start? Because it looked like a real outlier in his performances this year.
I was surprised Kevin made that move when he did, and I asked him about it on the air the next day.
Yeah.
And one thing that I love about Kevin, and I've often wondered if, I think that all managers probably go through this. When you make a move and it doesn't work, you feel like you made the bold right move in the time, but how can you not second guess yourself? And the next day when I asked Kevin about it, on the air and off the air, he had the identical the identical response. He goes, Clevenger is paid to get a big lefty out in that spot. Freddie had just walked 2 guys in the inning, and we're trying to get him right and trying to get him confident. Now, was Freddie happy about being taken out? No, he was not. And that's where being a good manager is behind the scenes, because he and Freddie talked about it. Freddie was not happy about it. Kevin said, I didn't expect him to be happy about it, but I thought at that moment that was the right move. And yet the next day, Kevin's second guessing himself. Should I have done it? Should I have not? In the moment, that's how I felt. I'm sure that's how he felt taking out Snell in 2020 in the World Series. All you can do as a manager is make what you think is the best move in that spot. And I do think that the Rays over the years, and we'll see this if they can go deep into October, lean towards getting the matchup that they want from their bullpen. So, it was a multi-pronged move. But if Freddie didn't want to be taken out there, he probably shouldn't have walked the 8-9 hitters at the top of the order. So that's what it comes down to. Freddie's gotten better with each of his 3 starts, and I'm curious to see how he does tonight.
Yeah, Kyle Snyder will figure it out. No question about it. Andy Freed, many thanks for joining us, and continued success down there in your career. You've done a remarkable job. I'm very proud of you.
Well, always happy to talk to you guys, and hope we see you this weekend.
Okay.